Domingo, 41, and her mother, Elizabeth Cui Domingo, 74, were fatally shot in a Best Buy parking lot in Augusta, Georgia, during what was supposed to be a routine custody exchange with Melissa's ex-husband, Hajir Talebzadeh, 41, on September 7. The tragic events unfolded quickly and violently, turning a simple exchange of their 5-year-old son Michael into a deadly confrontation. Just days before, Melissa had been cleared of charges from an incident in 2021 where she had shot Hajir in the head during a violent confrontation. The court had ruled that she acted in self-defense, acknowledging the years of abuse she had suffered at his hands. Melissa had finally been granted immunity after the court recognized her struggle with battered woman syndrome and post-traumatic stress disorder, issues that were a result of years of psychological and physical abuse by Hajir. Despite her newfound freedom, the ghosts of her past lingered, and the custody battle for their son continued to be a source of anxiety and fear. On that fateful day in September, Melissa arrived at the parking lot with her mother, Elizabeth, who had always been her support system. Elizabeth, now in her 70s, had witnessed the abuse and had become Melissa's fierce protector. Together, they waited for Hajir to arrive for the handover of Michael. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot, but the atmosphere felt heavy, like a storm was on the horizon. As Hajir's car pulled into the parking lot, Melissa felt a familiar knot tighten in her chest. She had seen this look in his eyes before, the same rage that had marked their marriage and led to countless violent confrontations. This wasn't just another exchange. Something about today felt different, and Melissa couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to escalate. Hajir stepped out of his car, his body tense and his hands clenched into fists. Melissa's heart raced. She felt the weight of her mother's hand on her arm, offering silent reassurance, but Melissa knew this was a dangerous moment. Hajir had been unpredictable ever since their divorce, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. Without warning, Hajir pulled out a handgun from under his jacket and pointed it directly at Melissa. "You think you're free? You think you're going to take my son from me?" he spat, his voice trembling with fury. Melissa froze, the cold barrel of the gun aimed at her chest. Her mother, standing just a few feet away, screamed, "No," in an attempt to stop him. But Hajir's rage was uncontrollable. He fired. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the parking lot as Elizabeth fell to the ground, lifeless. Melissa screamed, her mother's blood staining the pavement beneath her. In that moment, the world around her seemed to slow. The only thing she could think of was protecting herself, and her son, who was in the backseat of the car, witnessing everything. Hajir moved toward her, the gun still aimed at her, and fired her directly on the head. Melissa fell to the ground, her body twitching, then still. Melissa collapsed next to her mother's body. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. When the police arrived at the scene, they found a chaotic, heartbreaking scene. Melissa lay motionless, her eyes staring blankly at the sky, her mother by her side equally dead. Michael, their young son, was kneeling beside his dead mother and grandmother wailing. Hajir was arrested on the spot, his hands trembling as the officers cuffed him. The weight of the situation was too much for him to comprehend. He was taken into custody, charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of cruelty to a child. Hajir, despite his violent history, claimed he had acted in self-defense when speaking to the police. He told them that Melissa had been the one to pull the trigger first, a desperate lie to try and justify his actions. He was arrested at the scene, taken into custody by the police as the officers processed the evidence. Hajir, despite his brutality, was allowed to explain himself. He was booked on 2 counts of murder, the deaths of Melissa and her mother weighing heavily on his conscience. But as Hajir sat in a holding cell, he couldn't control his temper any longer. The rage that had festered inside him for so long had finally erupted in a tragic outburst that cost him everything. In his prison cell, awaiting his trial for murder, Hajir sat, reflecting on his actions. His temper had always been his greatest enemy, but this time there was no coming back from it. He had taken 2 lives that day, including the woman he once claimed to love. The court would decide whether his actions were self-defense or cold-blooded murder, but Hajir knew, deep down, that he had lost control. And now, he would pay the price for his uncontrollable rage. Melissa's story would remain entangled in a tragic web of self-defense, love, anger, and regret. But for now, Hajir waited in prison, reflecting on the consequences of losing control and the irreversible damage his actions had caused. He couldn't undo what he had done. He couldn't bring back the lives he had taken. And he couldn't erase the pain of a boy who would grow up without a mother and a grandmother. All Hajir could do now was wait for the trial that would determine his fate.